Good afternoon, everyone. I have 12:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. Um, there has been a slight change in the schedule, and I say slight, it's probably a massive change in the schedule. Unfortunately, our speaker, Jeanette Sutton, had to cancel today. Something came up, and she was not going to be available to speak. So I am going to do my best to reschedule her for a later date because I do think she's got really good things to say, and it's a great topic. So today I have put together some general questions that relate to PIOs, communications, that kind of type thing, and I'm hoping to conduct just a impromptu, if you will, roundtable discussion. If you have something else that you want to do, would rather do, or if you came specifically for content from Jeanette Sutton, I apologize. You are more than welcome to drop off and continue your day. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I understand completely. But I do hope that if you are interested, you stick around. If you have something to share, I'm going to ask that you unmute and just share it with the group, and we will see how this goes. So let's just go ahead and get started. Um, So I'm not going to go in what the Wednesday webinar is, but roundtable discussion. So I have several questions. If anybody wants one of these specific topics, if they really like them, if they jump out at them, please put them into the chat, and I will make sure that I get to them. I think I drafted, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 questions. I don't know that we'll get through them all. It kind of depends on how much conversation goes on. I want plenty of conversation, so I'd rather get into two or three topics really good and get lots of people sharing than get through all 12 and it just be me talking. So if you see something you like, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to start from the beginning. If nobody wants to comment, um, I'm going to end this real quick. So, no pressure there. I appreciate you. This is a safe zone, so there are no stupid comments. There are no bad questions. We are all friends here, so I hope that something comes of this. So quite simply, my icebreaker today. What is the last communicated related skill or tool that you learned that helped you do your job better? Um, does anybody want to take a crack at that? Anybody want to share? Feel free to unmute yourself to answer. Um, I will say a couple of things. I have recently, oh, there we go. Somebody says using Microsoft Copilot to polish up documents or to help flush out ideas. Leah, would you care to unmute yourself and kind of expand on that a little bit? I know Microsoft Copilot, that's an AI tool. I use ChatGPT typically, that's my go-to, but feel free, expand on that. I know that Brad is definitely interested in AI.
Yeah, so the Microsoft Copilot kind of already on my computer, so I just used that app and I used that I started using that a lot back in February. I attended an AI webinar on how you can use it to help your everyday work. So when I'm trying to come up with an idea or I'm stuck while I'm like writing a report and I know the words I need to use, but I don't know how to put it in a good format to make it understandable for everybody. I kind of just tell it what I'm wanting and it can kind of um, put it in the words that I want, or I keep asking it like, no, do it this way or do it that way. So I've used it a lot to help create content for like social media posts, more like captions, because if you don't have an account, you can't utilize any of like the images that it wants to make or anything like that. So I use a lot of it for just words or to, take something from an old plan, an old like communication plan or whatnot, a section, and I put it in there. I'm like, can you make this better? To kind of help take out some of all the wordiness and make it a little bit more simplified. So I enjoy using it. I don't use it all the time. I won't say that I don't work, but I do use it a lot of the time to help flesh out those ideas and just try to get what's in my brain onto the computer because sometimes I struggle with that. So it's a good tool.
Excellent, excellent. That's great. And I agree totally. I like to use it initially for, like you said, the ideas, and I like to use it at the end to polish things. I think it's really, really good at that. Like you mentioned, it is a tool. I use it a lot for various purposes, but you can't. I always, I try to warn people, you can't trust it to do anything. You need to verify. So if it writes you something, read it, but it will help you progress. It will get you started. I totally agree. Anybody else have any other thoughts on one of the AI tools? If you use something different than Copilot?
I use Copilot, but I like to use it to kind of simplify stuff to make sure that it's at a level that everybody will understand.
Absolutely. Another great use. Yeah, simplify it. I like to use it to adjust my reading level. Make sure that, it's at, not at the 12th grade level. Make sure it's at the sixth grade level, things like that. Yes, absolutely. Great idea. I am working on trying to get. I did a webinar and somebody did an hour on using AI as a PIO, and I thought she was fantastic. I'm trying to get her to do one of these Wednesday webinars, and she did a great job. Actually, during the webinar, people online were doing the practice. She started you off, and then you kind of saw what your response was going to be with the way you worded it, and then we shared those things. It was excellent. So I'm hoping to get more of that. Any other comments? Bell, is it Bell? Says Canva and InDesign to create and polish up public relations and communication projects for internal department messaging. I am relatively new to Canva. I've been using it pretty regularly for about a year now. I seem like I joined late. And I really do love the simplicity of it. Belle, would you like to unmute and expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'd say, yeah, just to piggyback off of what you said, Canva is a really great tool where, in terms of just creating colorful or engaging projects that reach out to different members, of different agencies within the department, it's just really simplified. Um, yeah, other than that, it's pretty clear cut. I also use InDesign, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, and when I combine all of those different software programs together, it creates such an upgraded modern version of either outdated things that have been created in the past or just really cool and new new messaging for the team. So yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Excellent. Hey, Belle, who are you with? And I should have mentioned this at the start. If you do come on and speak, I hope you do. Please tell everybody your name because right now we have nobody sees the visuals, and then what agency you're with.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Belle de la Cruz. I am one of the more, I guess, recently or relatively recent hires. I started with the Department of Community-Based Services in December. I relocated to Kentucky from New York for my role, and my specific role is information officer. So essentially, I create messaging for our agencies internally and then externally as well. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Belle. Let's go ahead and move on. Here's one kind of sort of on networking. So which non-government voices most influence resident behavior during an emergency, and how have you mapped them out? Does anybody have any thoughts on this? I think specifically some local agencies. I work at the state, I work across the whole state, but I'm very curious to see what say some county personnel would do. Any thoughts at all? No thoughts? I'm going to move to the next question, and that's not a problem. All right, I guess we're going to move to the next question. So building on that community trust and networking again. So how do you decide when to correct misinformation versus amplify verified community reports? This I see a lot. So I'm very interested in what people have to say, especially on social media. Who on here manages a social media uh, for their agency?
Leah Jacobs, Green River District Health Department. I'm a preparedness coordinator, but I'm also kind of like the backup to the backup to the backup of PIO. So I don't necessarily manage our social media, but I work with our communications team a lot, especially for our CERC plan, but also just the normal one. And one thing we've talked about potentially doing at some point in time is to do a policy or procedure type deal on our actual Facebook page to explain like if you're, how you should act. I know there was another health department in the state that has that on their Facebook page. I can't remember who it is right off the top of my head, but it explains like, I mean, your comments will be deleted if XYZ, like if you kind of go against that or, misinformation, etc. So we've thought about doing that to kind of help with that, misinformation or the comments that get put on certain posts to kind of combat that back and forth argument type deal that you can get.
Excellent, excellent. I definitely recommend every agency that has a social media to have some sort of plan, specifically that calls out things like this. There's misinformation, there's disinformation, there's just errors. I try to avoid, arguments online. I try to keep my nose out of that as much as possible. Generally, I believe that, if safety or harm can come from whatever is being said, it has to be corrected. Um, and then depending on how that, you know, the severity of what kind of like the consequence of somebody following what's been said, that kind of type thing. I like to post links to accurate information, um, and then if necessary, flat out calling it out as completely inaccurate and unsafe. Um, but for little stuff, um, I try to avoid those, and I found quite often, you know, the audience themselves will kind of defend if you get one of those like you're talking about a troll on. A lot of the times, the rest of your audience will handle that for you. So any other comments on that? All right, I'm going to move on. So crisis communication. So what's your approach to coordinating messages when multiple agencies are involved in a response? I would love to hear from both county and state organizations on this. Any thoughts, anyone?
This is Christy from Muhlenberg County. Um, I would like to have a consistent message, but we have such egos that it's posing a huge problem because everybody doesn't want to play along together well.
I can understand that. Yes. I think that's, kind of a team building skill, that I think the organizations themselves have to start to make a priority. And I think that's where the networking comes in. Just the regular interaction among those agencies, communicating beforehand, before the crisis times come up, to kind of understand how, each of our personalities work and how we like to do business and that kind of type thing. Any other comments? All righty. Thanks, Christy. All right. So this one. So what single lesson from past activations still lacks a practical fix for you and why? So what are you still struggling to get through? Any thoughts?
It just kind of, it's me again, Christy from Muhlenberg County. Still just trying to get a consistent message because we've got EMS that will say one thing, the police will say another, and then we've got the health department with a different message, and just trying to get everybody to come together.
Absolutely, totally agree. That's where, the ICS system incident command, there has to be a unified approach, unified messaging. We can't expect the public to listen to us if they're getting three different messages from us. So I totally agree. I think that comes through experience, through networking, through trust, through working together. But it is, you know, communication is always at the top of the list of what went wrong in an after action report, and it's probably always going to be that way. That's our goals and our jobs as PIOs, is to continually work on that. I wish I could snap my fingers and fix that. Any other thoughts?
Networking doesn't seem to be the issue. I would like to see the key players all do a class together to have to and see how well it worked.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it gets harder and harder to get everybody available at the same time to do a training or an exercise or something like that to practice. Yeah, great comment. Any other thoughts? All righty, I'm gonna move on. Um, Here's one: equity in translation. So, which language or accessibility format remains hardest to deliver for you under times of pressure? First of all, I think this is definitely a know your community kind of issue. For those that don't know, I teach an L105 public information basics, and I preach know your audience, know your audience. You have to know what special communications are needed in your community, into your audience, so that you can get that message across, whether that be multiple different languages, whether that be deaf and hard of hearing, whether that be vision impairments, whatever the case may be. Does anybody have any thoughts?
Gujarati.
Go ahead.
Gujarati. It's an Indian, a dialect of an Indian language.
Oh, and do you guys have a population of that in your area?
Yes.
Wow. I have not heard of that. I'm going to have to look that up. Do you know about how many people you have that speak that?
Uh,
And you don't have to. I don't
I
want to
start
put
saying
you.
I'm not sure, but there seems to be several of them.
Wow. Okay. All righty. Do you have, um, have you networked? Do you have a liaison, if you will, within that community? That
We do. Thank goodness we do.
excellent. Well, that's good, and that's one of the keys. Again, knowing your audience, knowing what your needs are. You don't necessarily have to deliver the message. You have to get it to the person that will do it. And I think I have a question a little later about that. So excellent. Thank you, Christy. Here's another one. It's kind of on the same line. So, what indicators tell you that an underserved group actually received and act on the alerts that you send out, or messages, or whatever the case may be? How do you monitor that basically? How do you know that your message is getting through?
I just reach out to them and, see if they were aware of it, and if not, then we try to troubleshoot, better ways.
Excellent. Yeah, I really think, part of it is the end message. What were you trying to get across? So there's ways to check to, see if they did what you asked them to do. And there's also, again, the communication with that liaison, the person that you are using to get the information to that segregated group of people, whatever the case may be. And it's ultimately it's follow up, it's checking to see, and then making adjustments as necessary. So excellent. All right, social media. So are any of you using any scheduling tools or templates that help you streamline your social media work? I will say that I use Loomly. I'm a big fan of it. It allows me to schedule across all of my platforms. I can basically, I schedule one post and then I can edit and format each individual post for each different social media platform that I use. I can schedule it at different times. I can change pictures, text, links. I can get my message across in different ways across different platforms. That was Loomly. I do have a paid subscription for that. I don't think it's super expensive. I think it's cheaper than something like Hootsuite. And I could follow up and find out how much it is per year. It also does data analytics for me across all of the platforms. I can do cumulative or I can do individual. I really like it. I think it's very simple. I'm sure there are some people that would like some deeper dives that maybe it doesn't do. But I think it's for the price, the value I think is definitely there. I would recommend it to anyone. Anybody else use any? I think this is my last question. So it went quite fast, but that's okay. So, are there any topics or speakers that you would like to see featured on one of these Wednesday webinars? Despite the fact that we had a little setback today and our speaker had to cancel, I am gladly, happy to try to find any speaker topic, something to fill a need for you. So is there something that interests somebody they would like to see discussed at a future date?
I mean, just like the templates, to be prepared ahead of time for everything, creating those. I think maybe some of the smaller departments probably would need more help. I know we do.
All righty. Yeah, I am a big fan of templates. I am a big fan of repurposing stuff that you put together, using it again, using it later, tweaking it to make your work less. So I will look into something like that. Uh, Bella says gaining final approval on messaging for internal department messaging as well as for external agencies. What you're talking about there, you're talking about policy, and I love that. Yes, definitely. I do think we've touched on, I've had at least one, probably two speakers on these webinars that talked about in general communication plans, and those plans definitely need to have approval. The means to get approval in them. As I mentioned, I teach public information basics, and I think the approval process for blue sky day-to-day messaging has to be different than crisis communication. Crisis communication has to go out fast. You can't go through 10 different levels of approval to get an emergency message out that could save somebody's life. I think that's where templates come in. And I think that's where, building that reputation with your leadership is. So just literally talking about the approval process for messaging, that aspect of a communication plan, I think we could definitely make that a topic on its own, and I will look into that. Um, any comments? Any other comments on that? All right, folks. Well, I appreciate you being here today. Again, I apologize. This isn't the content you were hoping to get today, but I hope you've taken something away from it. I know that I have. As always, you have my contact information. You can contact me at any time. There's a link to where our webinar is recorded. I do have another webinar scheduled for August, and I think today I think I finalized my September topic, but let's just start with August. So in August, we're going to have Kevin Smith come talk to us, and he's going to talk about building winning relationships with non-governmental organizations. So if you think of VOADs, volunteer organizations, things like that, he has worked with our VOAD liaison here at KYM before. He is a great speaker. I think you're going to really enjoy. I think specifically at the local level, I think it's going to be very beneficial. Registration for that is open. I hope you will join us. I will follow up as soon as I can get Jeanette Sutton rescheduled. I will let everybody know when that is going to happen. But otherwise, I appreciate you all being here today. I know it's short. I'm going to give you a half hour of your day back. I appreciate that you took the time to spend with me and unmuted and made some comments and talked with the group. Otherwise, have a great day, and I hope to see you next month in August. Thank you.